On this week's FPL Happy Hour.
To our 10, what is it that we're calling it? 10 steps to satisfaction.
I can't
Right.
get no.
Hello and welcome to FPL Happy Hour, episode 2 of season 3 with myself, Sham, otherwise known as FPL 2 Guys 1 Cup on Twitter.
And myself, Rob, otherwise known as FPL Panda.
Rob, other than being absolutely melting, how are you?
Yeah, I'm. It's quite warm, isn't it, tonight?
Yeah.
I've got my cold beer out. I'm gonna. I'll just
drink or just to warm your face?
warm my face. My face is already warm, mate.
Oh, sorry, cool your face.
I think I'll probably ruin the beer if I hold it to my face too long because it'll just get too warm.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, other than the sweltering heat, yeah, I'm good. Can't believe we're only now 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks till the deadline for game week 1. So we're edging closer, but there's still lots of things to discuss. As I think people are constantly still tinkering with their teams. There's a few sort of big, really high ownerships that have come out in the last few days as more people are getting signed up onto it. So yeah, things are taking shape. I wonder how much that is going to change though in the next couple of weeks, with still transfers coming thick and fast throughout the league.
Indeed. Lots of people not priced yet as well. Sancho not officially announced.
Yeah,
And not
apparently
priced, so.
Apparently there's still some paperwork between United and Dortmund that hasn't been finalised. It's like he's pretty much like I know for a fact that the photos are all done, like everything's done. It was all done last week before he jumped on a plane with Marcus Rashford to go on holiday, and yeah, so it's all sitting there just waiting. Like the social media guys probably just itching to just press
the button.
Yeah, post and send it all out. So I mean, I'm itching to see whatever the announcement is. Originally, I thought it was going to be a case of them waiting for Varane and then doing like a big double announcement. But that looks like it's going to take maybe another week or so for them to iron out a deal. But I'm pretty confident now that that might happen as well. It's really exciting.
Right, so last week we were on Planet FPL's takeover week, and hopefully that means we have some new listeners. So if you've joined us again, welcome and thanks for coming back. Right, on tonight's episode, we'll be discussing the forward dilemma and looking at some stats as voted for you guys on Twitter, by you guys, I should say. We'll then be taking a look at another FPL strategy, and this time Rob's strategy for this season, showing his draft and what it looks like at the moment. And finally, ending with our 10 steps to satisfaction. Ooh, I hear you cry. Don't worry, this is not erotica, it's the FPL edition. Right, so let's get started.
I'll tell you what, mate, it might be erotica by then because it's fucking hot. I'll have my shirt off, there'll be moves everywhere. Fucking hell.
Let's start talking about the forwards, Rob. And you took out some stats from some of the popular forwards, didn't you?
Yeah, so I had a look earlier today, and I thought, I mean, it is very heavily weighted now in the ownership towards like the top 8. At the moment, you've got Ivan Toney, who's owned by, I think it's an insane amount now. Ollie Watkins following his brace against the mighty Colchester, wasn't it? Was it Colchester? No, it was Walsall. It was Walsall. His brace against the mighty Walsall. His ownership skyrocketed in the last sort of 24 hours or so. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who obviously no probably won't need that much recovery from the Euros, as he played about 20 minutes over the course of the tournament. Harry Kane, who might have a bit more recovery to make from the Euros. Patrick Bamford, obviously not at the Euros. Kelechi Iheanacho, Edison Cavani, and Michail Antonio. So these are the 8 players that are sort of currently, the standouts that, well, that's what the game, like the managers in the game are feeling are the standouts. And I don't think you'd argue with that. You
No, agreed.
wouldn't look anywhere else really, other than sort of those 8 strikers as players that you'd have playing. Now we've had a lot of people saying, "Oh, would you only have maybe one of these or 2 of these and have just a bench fodder third striker?"
The only other one that I would add in there that people might be looking at, and I've seen it in a few drafts, is Wilson.
Yep, Callum Wilson's another one. I think with Wilson, I think it's just the Newcastle factor and fitness factor. Can we trust him to not get injured? I think that's the big factor. And then, I mean, you've got like missing from that this 8. You've got the likes of Jamie Vardy, Aubameyang, as well. I know we laugh, but because he did have a poor season last season, but he might come back and prove us all wrong this season coming. So, and there's other names there. Martial as well is another one. If he stays at United, you'd think that he'll probably start at least half the games for United this season. So there's plenty of other options.
All kind of like now, I would probably say they're all considered differentials to a certain degree.
I think in some cases, I think they're just generally priced out a little bit. I think Martial could be good value if he stays. But Vardy, I'm not sure there's the value in it, and Aubameyang the same. I think Aubameyang, if he was still a midfielder, I think if Arsenal showed some real potential for the season in the first couple of weeks, I think Aubameyang quickly comes into your team if he's a midfielder. But because he's a forward, I'm just not sure the value's there where you can get value from other players.
So from a stats point of view, then it looks like from these 8, Tony is completely dominating all the charts, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, goals, shots on target, like they're 3 things that he leads the way. I mean, you could argue that he played 8 more games. I think it's a 46 game season in the Championship. So he played 8 more games. Well, he had a base of 8 more games more than the rest of these guys. But his XG is up there as well at 28.69, which if we sort of look through, the closest after that is Harry Kane at 20.5, which is crazy. 28.69. And his non-penalty XG, because he did take 9 penalties and converted 9 penalties. So his non-penalty XG is 21.85, which, the next best after that is Harry Kane with 17.5. So, I mean, it's hard to look away from it, and you can see why. Like the majority of managers are rallying around Ivan Toney. 6.5, I think you're potentially looking at a Pookie Mark II, but possibly in a better team than that Norwich one from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think obviously, a couple of things to note on here. The first thing that you already highlighted, Rob, was obviously this is based over more games. So the data from that point of view is slightly skewed. And also, obviously, these are in Championship, right? But even if you take those 2 things out, he's still up there amongst everyone else, if not better, from a statistical point of view. And he's cheaper than everyone else on this list, right? So I think there's definitely clear value, and you can see why the ownership numbers are as high as they are. And playing for a Brentford side that are extremely attacking, I can see why the ownership numbers are as high as they are.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's at that price, 6.5. It's worth just taking the gamble. And as we said about when we were just talking about Aubameyang and Arsenal, in that game week 1 fixture, they've got Arsenal at home. It'll, like, for a lot of fans, like for Brentford fans, this will be their first visit to this stadium.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine what the atmosphere, especially if it's full, what the atmosphere is going to be like there. And I'd fancy, it'd be nice to sort of say that you'd think that they'd give Arsenal a really good game. And the stats say that if Brentford do well, it probably means that Ivan Toney's going to do well as on top of that.
Interestingly, on here, Ollie Watkins, who's also quite highly owned, and I think that might be partly to do with a couple of reasons. Firstly, that Villa's first 3 games are very good, and I think one of the other reasons are he scored a brace yesterday, didn't he, against Walsall? So maybe his ownership numbers have inflated because of that. But he hasn't come up that highly on any of your statistics, or not highlighted as the highest. Do you think he's still a good option?
I think with the likes of Buendia, if Grealish does stay for another year, and like as the days go on, it looks more and more likely that he might be staying. So if he does stick around, then that just helps Watkins out, because players like Grealish, Buendia, in behind him, they don't take goals from him. Like, how many goals did Jack Grealish score last season? Not many, but he created quite a lot. Like, they're creative players that he's got behind him. So yeah, I think it just I think he's a great option. Especially if Jack Grealish stays, then he's got that creativity behind him to move forward with. There's so many good options out there, and I think the problem with Watkins is you could argue that you could get the cover with Buendia at $1 million or $2 million less as a midfielder, to then make room for one of the other strikers. That, I mean, there's so many at decent prices. Calvert-Lewin at it's only 0.5 more. And his stats are very similar to Watkins. So yeah, Watkins scored 14, Calvert-Lewin's got 16. Watkins non-penalty XG 14.5, Calvert-Lewin's 15.4. So it's like very marginal. But yeah, for that 0.5, you're getting that tiny bit more out of him. So yeah, it's something to look at. Harry Kane, obviously, he takes a lot of shots. Out of the 8 that we've picked, Toney was the highest number of shots, 135. But again, in like 46 games. But Kane's only taken 1 less shot last season than that, 134. The only other player over 100 was Bamford with 105 shots. So yeah, Harry Kane is another one to look out for. But I think no matter what, I don't think for game week 1 he's an option. If he stays at Spurs, he's playing against Man City. If he is leaving Spurs, it probably won't be till after game week 1, and he'll be sitting on the bench at against Man City. So I can't see him as a game week 1 option, but then game week 3, I think both Spurs and Man City both have decent fixtures, and I think it could be worth then going and either taking a hit, or you've got an opportunity to roll a transfer there just to move some money around to get the boost up to the 12.5. So I think Harry Kane for me at the moment is just don't touch and see where he's playing after game week 1. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think where my head's at the moment is just in general with regards to the forward line. Tony and Watkins are an almost 100% lock for me. And then that third option, like at the moment it's Calvert-Lewin, but we're going to talk about some strikers now. Some of them are tempting me. So
yeah. So I mean, first up, we've got Patrick Bamford. Now, I think he was 17 goals was a great return last season, but I think he should have had more. In fairness, his XG was 17.3, and he's outperformed his non-penalty XG, which was 15.7. But I think just the creativity that was there from Harrison and Rafinha down either side at Leeds, he should have been coming away with more than that. There were so many weeks through last season where I think a lot of people were jumping on Rafinha because he was producing great numbers for creativity down that right hand side. But the frustrating thing was no one was finishing the chances. He was whipping crosses in time after time after time after time, and there was weeks when you would expect him to come away with, like, if there was a top striker there, 3 or 4 assists in one game. And I'm just not sure Patrick Bamford gave that. So I think, am I being harsh saying 17 was a bad return from him?
No, I don't think it was a bad return. I think it was a Patrick Bamford return.
It's a Patrick Bamford return. And a lot of those goals came in the first half of the season.
Yeah, I think Bamford is a type of player that needs 10 shots to score 1 goal. And I don't mean that literally, but he needs a lot of shots. Like, he will miss a lot of big chances. I don't think this data has got big chances missed,
No.
but I would probably say that he missed a lot of big chances. I would go as far as to say maybe the most in the league. I know that, like, when I was watching the games, I was like, oh my God, like, he should have scored that. But then he'll score some worldies which have got an XG of like 0.05 or something like that.
Wasn't there one? I've forgotten who it was against. He'd had like 4 or 5 chances, and then he had one on his left foot from outside the box, and he put it into the bottom corner.
That's exactly the one that I was thinking about now.
And something like that would have had an XG of like less than 0.5.
Yeah.
And he slotted it away. But there was lots of goals like that in the first half of the season, which I think is why his XG is still as low as it is. Because I think in the second half of the season, that's then been bolstered up by all of the chances that he missed.
Yeah.
So next up, we've got Kelechi Iheanacho, who, I mean, from January, February time, was a regular starter in the Leicester side. I remember us sitting here arguing whether it was, I thought it was going to be Perez that played up front. I think he got 1 or 2 games as a number 9. And then Iheanacho came in, and didn't he score a hat-trick, or he got a brace on his first start?
I think it was against Sheffield United.
And then from that moment, he was pretty much undroppable. And then I think then injuries kind of went his way to Barnes and Maddison, where it meant he got to keep his place in the starting lineup at Leicester. 12 goals, which, considering I think when we discussed it in February time, he hadn't scored a Premier League goal. He'd scored 1 goal all season, and that was in Europe. So 12 goals all since January, February time is a decent return from him. An XG of 7.8. So he's beating his XG, but then I can remember from Ian Atro, there's been some goals from outside the box. There's probably been 3 or 4 goals from outside the box where, he's making him outperform his XG. He gets 43.1% of his shots on target, but he doesn't take a lot of shots. 25 shots over the course of the season. How many? Let's just have a quick look. In 16 starts, so averages 2 shots a game. Well, less than 2 shots a game. I'm not sure. How do you feel about Ian Atro? I think it's another case of with Daka coming in for Leicester. Do you think it's Ian Atro that will get the nod and Vardy is the rotation, or is it Ian Atro that's the rotation risk?
I don't know. It's difficult because towards the end of the season, there was a couple of games where he wasn't starting, right? Although he didn't take a lot of shots per 90, he did. So obviously, I think it was because he didn't play a huge amount of games last season. So his shots per 90 was like one of the highest out of these 8, and it was like 25 shots on target. So it does seem quite low in terms of the shots on target, but I think it's just because of the amount of games that he played. He's the type of player that it feels like he doesn't even need a lot of shots to. He reminds me a bit like Vardy. Vardy, his statistics are crap. He will take 1 or 2 shots, but he's quite clinical. And without looking at the stats, I would assume from what I've seen of Ian Atro that he's quite similar. From when I see him, he is quite a clinical striker. My only worry is Leicester's fixtures aren't the greatest to start. And I think for me, it's like a watch and see for a few games to see if he's going to start with Vardy. If Harvey Barnes, is Harvey Barnes back now? Because obviously one of the reasons why they ended up going to 2 up top was because of Harvey Barnes' injury. So that made them change formation. If Barnes is back, do they go back to just 1 up top, and will that be Vardy, for example?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. There's a lot of talk of Maddison leaving. I think it's every year that there's a rumor about Maddison leaving. I think it's Arsenal. Is it Arsenal that have been linked to him in the last couple of days? Which could see that possibly happening, and that would probably mean they might be looking at going into sort of that more 4-4-2 than the sort of 4-5-1 or 4-3-3 that they've been playing. So it'll be, I think I agree. Like sit, watch, learn with Leicester, because we know that they've got another very good striker that's come in, Daka. So where the rotation is, what the formation is, etc. Right, Edmonton Cavani, who I really do fancy especially for game week 1.
So do I, to be honest with you, Rob. It's one of the ones that I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, he was brilliant last season when he played. He didn't get many opportunities. There was a lot of rotation up front. But a return of 10 goals from his 15.3 90s. So it says the number of minutes divided by 90. 15 full matches played, 10 goals, shots on target just under 43%, His XG of 7.4 is pretty low. Again, outperforming his XG. I mean, that's one thing that we've noticed across most of these strikers. They all outperform their XG, which is a good thing. He doesn't take penalties at United, which is probably one of the downsides of his game. And you don't see him diving to the floor or anything like that you might see from other United players. So he very rarely wins penalties either. But with the creativity behind him in that United team, I can see them being a real threat. I mean, is that a bias from me, or
No, I he's one of the candidates for that third spot for me. United's fixtures are very, very good to start the season off, and that's why I was thinking about tripling up. So you got Leeds, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle. For those that are watching on video, you can see on the screen. So good fixtures to start, and I don't see why you couldn't go with Bruno and Cavani and Shaw. But obviously we don't know what's happening with Shaw because there was rumours about his rib injury or whatever. But yeah, I don't see why not, and I don't think it's biased at all, mate.
No, I think the only issue I have at the moment is with Martial and whether he comes back in and is fit and raring to go, and Solskjaer goes, right, this is your chance, take it, and gives Cavani a bit of extra time to rest and recover.
My only worry is so I can see Cavani doing 60 to maybe 70 minutes a game rather than a full 90. Martial coming in for the last 20 minutes, half an hour. And if Martial ends up doing well in that last 20 minutes, half an hour, does that mean the next game that Martial starts?
Yeah.
And Cavani's on the bench, and then Cavani comes on for the last 20 minutes, half an hour. That's my only concern. That is not necessarily, because the first 6 games, there's no, there isn't any like European football until I think game week 6, which means you don't have to worry. People were saying last year worried about Cavani's because they'll only play 1 game a week, and we're not sure if it's going to be European football or it'll be Premier League. Don't have to worry about the first 6 game weeks. It's the Martial conundrum that I would be worried about. That if Martial does one in the last 20 minutes of the game, will he start the next game?
I mean, with United, with Rashford out, I don't think we know what shape they will be playing. Sort of that front line, like you think they'll be to pick from. You've got Sancho, Martial, Cavani, Greenwood. Like there's 4 top forwards there. It's just how are they going to be organised with obviously trying to get Bruno in the hole behind the striker. You're going to think Pogba's going to be somewhere around about unless he goes to BSG as well. It's I think it's finding. I think whatever front three we see in that first game against Leeds is the one that Ollie thinks that's the strongest front three, minus Marcus Rashford. I think he's definitely worth a gamble on. We play our last friendly the week before against Everton, so it might be a good one just to keep an eye out on the lineup and see what it looks like it might be for the forward line. And finally, your man Michail Antonio, who doesn't boast the best statistics from the season gone. Only picked up 10 goals, which was disappointing in the end. I think it went for a stage where sort of didn't he score like 2 or 3 games in a row, and you kind of thought, he hit some form, and then he hamstring went, and then he came back, and then he got injured again, and I mean, do you think we're going to see more from him, as in the injuries are still kind of out the way, and we might see Mikel Antonio back to his best, or do you think he's
His
just someone
hamstrings
to be?
can go at any point.
Hmm.
That's the problem with Mickey, is that any moment his hamstrings. I think he's good for waltz. His hamstrings are alive and there, but the moment they're gone, that's it. And they can go at any moment, and that's the problem with him. It's difficult because we've got a good run of fixtures as well to start the season. Like they're kind of like so-so. I wouldn't say they're the best, but I wouldn't say that they're bad either. Who we've got? So
Newcastle, Leicester,
Palace,
Palace.
Southampton.
Yeah, it's not
So,
the worst.
No, it's not the worst. It's I think he's a wait and see. From what I've watched in pre-season, I really like the look of Bowen. Obviously not a striker, but I like the look of Bowen. And I would be favouring, if I was going to be choosing anyone, I would be favouring towards him. But it also depends on who we sign. We haven't made any, notable signings yet.
Bowen was playing sort of in that role that Lingard picked up, and then he was pushed out wide when Lingard was performing so brilliantly. When Bowen came back he was injured for a bit, wasn't he? And then he came back from injury, and then he was pushed out onto that right-hand side. But his goal involvement before that was like
it was big.
Yeah, like he was always in and around the assists or the goals themselves. So yeah, that could be someone to keep an eye out.
I'm not too keen on Antonio, I'll put it that way. He's not on my shortlist at the moment.
Yeah, I think,
but maybe that's negative bias as a West Ham fan.
Yeah, I mean at 7.5, there's other sort of players around that price, like that we looked at earlier: Tony, Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, sort of all around from 6.5 to 8 million. And I mean Cavani is stretched more at 8.5. That we'd probably say I'd rather have him than one of those 3 or 4 than the other 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think for me, the last spot will be between Cavani and Calvert-Lewin. And one thing that I'm really not sure about is who's going to be on pens for Everton, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on at Everton at the moment. Without going into detail, their regular penalty taker, I imagine, might not be around for a while. Who's going to be on pens? Do you have any idea who might be on pens?
Well, you'd think it would be Richarlison, but he's currently banging in hat-tricks for Brazil and Japan. So, and you'd think they're going to go deep in. Like, if you've seen Dani Alves is captaining the side at 38 years old. I think they'll be one of the favourites for the Olympic tournament, which means that I think the final of the Olympics is the week before game week 1. So you'd and Richarlison just been playing in the Copa America as well. So you'd think we're not going to see, if Brazil get to the final of the Olympic Games, or the 3rd, 4th place playoff even, we're not seeing Richarlison until at least game week 4.
Yeah, so
or
that's the
thing. After the first international break, more or less.
So who takes pens for the first 3 game weeks?
Is it going to be DCL?
I was thinking,
we'll just bring on Leighton,
right?
We'll just bring on Leighton Baines.
So that's kind of what's in my thinking at the moment. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely Tony and Watkins. Like, those two are like a pretty much lock, and then the third one is a wait and see.
Cool. Well, that's that. Right. That's the forward dilemma. Hopefully, we've given people some information that can settle the dilemma. Yeah, or we've made it even worse. But at least we've narrowed it from 8 down to maybe 4. So we've halved it for everyone, which is a good thing.
Right, so our next topic we're going to be talking about is FPL strategy again. Last week we spoke about the ownership strategy and what I was looking at to do this season and what I will be doing this season. This week, Rob, we're going to be talking about what you're going to be doing this season and a slightly different strategy for what you were doing last year, and a little bit more complicated. So listeners and viewers, just try and bear with Rob while he explains what it is.
I'm going to try and do it in. I'm going to try and do it as if I was trying to explain it to you, so that it's not too tough. So basically, my strategy is for this season, or what I hope to move forward with this season, is inspired now. Seeing as we're welcoming Brentford into the Premier League, it's a little bit inspired by the Moneyball theory. So using data and player value to try and work out which players that could potentially unlock for big hauls, and most of these players could also be differentials in your team that you're pulling in before anyone else does. So that's the hope. Whether it works or not is another matter. So
before we move on, before you go on to explain what it is, for anyone that hasn't watched the film Moneyball, I highly recommend it. Both myself and Rob have both watched it. I loved it. Rob liked it a lot as well. Go and watch that film, and what Rob is about to explain to you will kind of put it in perspective a lot more. Anyway, go
on. I mean, last week we spoke about your ownership strategy, and I think you still had to take some of that because you're using a lot of risk to purely go with data. I think you also have to look at a little bit of, right, I need sort of 3, maybe 4 players, sort of a midfielder, an attacker, a defender, maybe not, don't really have to worry about the goalkeeper, and just have those in as kind of, right, they're my safe seats, my safe spots, but everyone else around them is going to be a player that is producing the numbers. So what the figures that I've using in pre-season at the moment is from last season. So I'm using goals and assists minus the penalties per 90. I'm using XG and XA minus penalties per 90. And for the championship players at the moment, I'm just using the actual goals and assists per 90. And I'm just taking an average of those figures to try and sort of give me an idea of how well that player's doing, and then comparing that against their current price to then give me sort of a value for that player. So, for example, over last season, like the top performing Premier League player from last season, because the championship, like I said, the data is a bit skewed where I haven't got some of the XG data yet. Kelechi Iheanacho, who we've just spoken about, with an average of actual goals and assists minus penalties and XG plus XA minus penalties, his average is 0.74 per 90, which is crazy. Which is 7.5 million. The values there. So that actually makes him the most valuable player at the moment from last season. So the idea of using this, obviously, you have to sort of look at how many games the player started, because you can't just use this per 90 data, because a player could be coming on for the last 10-15 minutes and getting lots of chances as the other team tires every week. so you can't just use that per 90. So I do break it down a little bit and look for sort of a minimum number of minutes that the player played. I try and look for players that have played, that started more than 18 to 20 games, so that you're getting players that are starting more than they don't start. So you're getting the more locked in players from that.
Rob, just quickly, I imagine in this as well, you're using your own knowledge of football based on things that are happening. So, for example, you mentioned Iheanacho. That model probably doesn't take into account that they've signed a new striker, for example, right?
No.
So it won't take into account that potentially he may not be starting going forward. So you might look at that and go, okay, Iheanacho's come out top, but I know they've just signed a new striker. I know that he's good value, but I might leave it for now just because we don't know, like similar to what we discussed previously. I don't know whether or not it's worth it because, well, I don't know if he's going to start, for example.
I mean, for those that have seen the film Moneyball, and they take a huge gamble and it almost doesn't pay off. Like the team sucks to start off with, and just by using the data, it can leave you a long way behind, especially if I mean they're using data as well that goes back. So it's a baseball team and they're using data that goes back years into a player's career, and like baseball players, they have careers that are like 25, 30 years long. Like they can play till they can't play, basically. Whilst footballers, you don't have, like for a lot of players, you have a very small catchment of data that you can take from them, because like XG and XA hasn't been around for that long as a widely spread statistic. So like if you're looking past 2 or 3 seasons, you might not be able to find that data for a player. So this is why I'm only having at the moment looking at last season's data, and it's just you kind of have to then fill in the blanks a little bit with your own knowledge, and maybe other data from the team that like as a whole, to try and sort of fill in those blanks, if that makes sense. So it's high risk, but I think the potential there where you'd have your 3 or 4 highly owned players that are your safe spots, and then 6 or 7 of these Moneyball players could unlock a potentially really good team. But
so sorry, Rob, just a question on that. So is it a case of is it a hybrid of the ownership strategy, but which I spoke about, and the other 4 to 5 players you're using the Moneyball strategy with? Or is it a case of this is all just based on the Moneyball strategy? Because you mentioned about the safe spots for the high ownership players. So my question would be, let's say the stats said Bruno was shit. Yeah. Let's say the stats said, based on this theory, Bruno's stats were shit and he was coming up as low, but you're aware that his ownership is high. Would you still put him in your team because you're worried about his ownership, or is it a case of I'm just sticking to the stats? Because that almost sound, if you would put him in your side because of the ownership solely, it almost sounds like it's a hybrid between the two.
So it's kind of like, so last week where you had your team of 8 or 9 highly owned, and then you had sort of 2 or 3 differentials in there as well. So this is kind of switching out the differentials for highly owned. And where you had your highly owned, that's where there's the sort of money ball players, the data players, within reason. Now there could be cases where, like, you see a particular fixture that you want to target. Say, let's have a look: City versus Norwich in game week 2, for example. Now I might go right. I might sack off a couple of the data players, but from other teams, to then go and just narrow that net in and go, right, I just want data players from Man City, and from them, Phil Foden and Ilkay Gundogan really sort of stand out, using the sort of algorithm and the formulas that I've built for it, and they're two players that I probably wouldn't argue against putting them in game week 2 into my side, especially if they haven't signed a striker. If they've signed a striker, then Sir Harry of Kane will be coming in for that week. And so you kind of have to, you take the data, but it's kind of keeping an open mind, and not like, you've got to look at the FDRs as well to look where am I going to target. Do I need to target my transfer in or out to avoid a bad run of fixtures, or do I need to target to go, I need to look into a Leeds player because they've got a good run of fixtures coming up, or something like that. So it's just this is that, like, player value data is like a small piece of a whole that involves looking at expected goals conceded, form, etc., of a whole team, as well as the individual. So I'm going to run with it. Like with any of these things, you need to sample it over a period of time. You can't just go, it's not working after 3 or 4 game weeks. If it's not working, and it's a case of, right, where is the data going wrong? Try and work on it to refine it. But I think it's worth experimenting with, because that data is there to be used. And we
I
know,
assume you'll be using the new season's data when it comes in.
Yeah. So as the data comes in for the new season, and this is why you have to let it run for 10 weeks or so, because like the more weeks of data you get in, the more accurate it becomes. We know this with XG, that like this is why you couldn't use like XG or XA data in a tournament like the Euros, which is 8 games if they go all the way. And a lot of players are only looking at maybe a catchment of 1 or 2 games. So this, you need, like, if you're looking at 10 games, potentially 900 minutes of football from a player, could be enough to sort of really be able to refine that data a little bit more and just see where it's leading. And I think it will generally point at high owned players anyway. A lot, like, but the idea is it might point to sort of another 4 or 5 high owned players, but it might also point to 2 or 3 players that are not on anyone's radar whatsoever, and they're just sneaking along, producing the data.
Which your current draft has shown.
They're sneaking along, but the data is sitting there to sort of back up bringing them in. So my current draft, like, it's those that tuned in last week will know that I had TAA and Dean last week. I've now got Sufal as well, because his underlying stats for expected assists were brilliant for last season. So he's come in. He's only 5 million, isn't he? So yeah, makes him a bargain. Fernandez and Salah high owned. Buendia, so I haven't got his XG and XA data, but his actual data, just 0.79 goals and assists minus penalties per 90 at 6.5. It makes him the best value for money player in the whole of FPL according to the data. So yeah, it'd be ridiculous not to go with him. But again, he's very highly owned as well. Iheanacho, like I spoke at the top, and we've already covered him earlier. Watkins, Ivan Toney. So Ivan Toney again is another one that we don't have the XG data. I'm going to have a look at. Well, I got it earlier for the forwards, but I haven't put it into my table yet just to check it out. But yeah, he was at 0.75 goals and assists minus penalties per 90. And yeah, Watkins is 0.5 goals and assists per 90, but it's more of the ownership of him at the moment that brings him in. So Tony's not there on ownership; he's there on his value. Yeah, Watkins is there on the ownership, and then Ait-Nouri is someone you see on my third bench. He was producing figures per 90 that were. Let me just find him. That were reasonable for a 4.5. I mean, 0.2 goals and assists minus penalties per 90, which for a 4.5 defender, Wolves isn't actually that bad. Like I wouldn't complain. It looks like he'll be starting more. He's quite young still. So how old is he? He's only 21. He's 21. So yeah, you'd think that with the new management, and it looks like he could be a potential starter, getting a string of games under him, build the confidence, and hopefully we see an attacking Wall side rather than what we've seen in the last sort of 18 months or so. For Mania, again at Watford, had a good season, similar figures and data to Ait-Nouri, again at 4.5. Yeah, leaves him at decent value. And Mbuemo of Brentford, who is the 6th top value out of every player in the league. But again, there wasn't any XG data for him. So he's someone that he could move out. Like I mentioned, Foden is up there. Jack Harrison's up there for midfielders. Gundogan, Lingard's up there, but whether he starts or not at United, I'm not sure. Campbell's up there. Grealish is up there. Ben Rama's up there. James Maddison's up there. So there's lots of other players sort of there or thereabouts, and all reasonably priced. I like Jack Harrison in particular. Maybe not for game week 1, but moving forward after that for Leeds. They've got Everton, Burnley, and then they've got Liverpool, but at 6 million, Jack Harrison, like you're happy to bench a 6 million midfielder and you'd rotate him with another 6 or 6.5 million midfielder that you've got in. I did notice, if you have a look, so Leeds, trying to spot where the Leeds badge is now. So when Leeds play Man United, Arsenal have Brentford, then Leeds play Everton and Burnley, whilst Arsenal play Chelsea and City, and then Leeds play Liverpool, whilst Arsenal play Norwich. So if Maddison, whether it's Maddison or Smith Rowe at Arsenal in that number 10 role, they could be a nice little rotation with Jack Harrison for the first few game weeks of the season, if that is your bag. But yeah, that's the strategy I'm going with, handling the data. I think, as we go through the season, because I'm obviously going to be spending the next couple of weeks trying to really crunch the numbers a little bit more. But as we go through, especially the first few weeks of the season, I'll bring up some tables to sort of try and explain how I'm making the moves and what I'm using to make each move, so that it kind of backs it all up with the data, rather than
I really like that theory.
just
I like.
following the crowd. I'm hoping that there'll be weeks when it's all awful, because that's what happens. Data is data at the end of the day, but there will be a couple of game weeks where there'll be one or two players that should go bang, and hopefully no one's got them.
Yeah. No, it sounds like
That's
a
the
great
idea.
strategy, mate. No, it sounds really
So
good.
hopefully it pays off and I can still beat you.
Yeah.
If I don't
You
beat
shot.
you, then I'll blame it on the strategy and I'll just go boring again.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that, Rob. Let's move on to our 10. What was it that we were calling it? 10 steps. 10 steps to satisfaction.
I can't
Right.
get no.
Right. This is obviously the FPL version because we are an FPL show. So what we thought we would do is think about things that we like doing during our FPL season, things that are helpful, things that some do's and some don'ts, or it's kind of like a combination of like tips for FPL success or like enjoyment, and what we do. I wouldn't necessarily say it's kind of like some do's and don'ts. It's more in terms of things that we enjoy doing that help us. So for those that are new to FPL or listening to like maybe new to FPL Twitter, don't know too much about all of these things, hopefully this will help you. Right, so we've done 5 each, so we'll take turns doing one at a time. So I'll go first, Rob. My first one is using livefpl.net, and that is a website that was created by Ragabolly, I believe, who is very knowledgeable. He knows a lot of stats, very good with kind of IT and building algorithms and all of that stuff. And on that site, they use effective ownership, where you can see what your ownership is like comparing all the people around you throughout as you go on in the season. So as we know, or as a lot of people will know, throughout this, as the season goes on, there is what is called dead teams. So you might have 8 million people to start with, and then half of them will end up not playing. The ownership stats that are on the FPL website are based on all of those players, whereas the stats that are on this website are based on live teams, so teams that are currently making transfers. They'll then do top 10k ownership stat, top 100k ownership stats, so you can see, depending on where your rank is, what moves people are making around you. So that really helps you in terms of deciding what moves to make, especially considering I'm going to be going with the ownership strategy. That will help me a lot in terms of understanding what my ownership is like compared to those around.
You can also see, because you can see how template are you, and so you'll be aiming for somewhere around 90% template for the season.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
that's pretty much. It'll also show you like live scores, so live bonus points, your live rank, all of those things that for those that really that enjoy taking it in on a match day. Those are the things that I really enjoy. So That's my kind of first step to satisfaction.
Your first step to satisfy that live FPL.net, it satisfies you. We'll clip that and
Indeed.
we'll clip that and we'll tag in Ragabali. So my first one is not to let price rises or falls scare you into making a move early. Now this is something else that you can get on livefpl.net, another site, Fantasy Football Fix. They have an algorithm for it. There's a couple of Twitter accounts that automatically tweet out potential price rises out there as well. I think with last season, it was really important not to do this because of COVID. And I think the start of this season might be worth just being aware of it as well. Although I did read somewhere today that it looks like that the Premier League are going to ask for players to be fully vaccinated to be allowed to play this season, all players and staff. So that might take away some of the risk, although you'd think that they'll still be testing, and if players do test positive, then they'll be having to isolate, etc. as well. But with the price rises and falls, I think people sometimes look at it too much into it for their team value, when they might forget that they're looking at a price rise or a fall from a Manchester City player or a Man United player or a Liverpool player or a Chelsea player or a West Ham player, forgetting that they've got another game to come in midweek in Europe. We always forget about the Europa League, but it does exist, and West Ham are apparently in it. So yeah, being aware if we're making a move to avoid a fall in price or to catch a player before they rise in price, just being aware that we're aware of the risks involved in that, because it can be disappointing if then that player pulls up with a hamstring injury in the arse end of nowhere in Eastern Europe and doesn't play the next game week and then drops in price before you can get rid of him again.
Okay, good tip. My next one is to follow Ben Crellin. Ben Crellin is the spreadsheet guru who at the beginning of this season, and has already done this, will outline when all the double game weeks / blank game weeks / triple game weeks may fall during that season, so that you can plan your chips around that. I've got a friend who is new to FPL, and he was kind of asking me, what chip is the best chip to use and when is the best time to use it. And my recommendation to that is around the blank and double game week. So generally we will use a free hit around the blank game weeks. That's one strategy to use. And the bench boost and the triple captain around a double game week. So you want to kind of use your bench boost in the biggest double game week, and then the triple captain in maybe a smaller double game week. That's the kind of ideal, because you've got the more chance of getting as many points. And Ben Crellin really helps you to do that. Obviously, there's other strategies that you can use. You don't have to use it during that time. But using that spreadsheet will give you an idea of when to capitalize on those chips the most, when to use your second wildcard, etc.
I think most years the triple captain chip gets used on a player that plays for a League Cup final team most seasons, because that always produces the smallest double game week from that postponed fixture, those two postponed fixtures. So I think another thing to be aware of with the wildcard this year is the major international tournaments happening in February, the African nations. So that could lead people into wild cards and all sorts, because Liverpool will be missing their two highest scoring FPL players. Well, one of them, the other one, Sadio Mane. But yeah, whether that means that it forces you to have to use your wild card to redistribute those funds or not. But I think it's too early to be planning for that right now. A lot can happen between now and then, but it's worth also keeping in mind there's other things that happen that could affect those decisions as well. Right, my next one is not being afraid to go against the crowd. Pick your moment, and if there's an opportunity to go against the herd, then do it. I'm looking at you because you thought there was an opportunity last season to triple captain Thomas Souček and go against the herd. You did it. And how many points did you get?
Fuck all.
Well, you got some.
Oh, he got a little bit.
He got a little bit. Did he get an assist?
I can't even remember.
Or is it just like he got 12 points, like 2 lots of...
Yeah, something like that. I think he got 2 lots of 4.
Yeah.
Or 3 lots of 4.
Yeah, so, yeah, pick your moment. You were having a gamble that week. I'm just singling it out. But, yeah, if you see a week where there's no sort of standout captain, there might be 4 or 5 different captain options, and you think, oh, I fancy the one that most people have got as number 5 on the list, or maybe someone else completely different. Go for it, do it, and if it works out, then it's a huge rank boost for you. But yeah, pick your moment, and yeah, don't be scared to go against what you might be reading on Twitter or hearing us like go on about in that week. Yeah, they're just opinions. Like, trust yourself sometimes.
Right, my next one is to do with price rises. You mentioned don't be scared of price rises. My one is keep an eye on price rises. So look at FPLstatistics.com or .co.uk. Look at things like Fantasy Football Fix. These sites will predict price rises. For those that are new to FPL and not sure about how price rises work, they normally happen at 1 or 2 in the morning. I think it's 2 a.m. and they're very random. And it can go up to 0.3 per week or down by 0.3 per week. If a player smashes it on let's say they're playing on a Friday night and they absolutely smash it, then the likelihood is they'll probably double rise during or possibly triple rise during that week. And these sites will predict when they are likely to do it based on algorithms and stuff. It's not an exact science. They're not always right, but it kind of gives you an idea of if they're likely to go up.
Well, it's based off performance and ownership. So if a player's ownership skyrockets, which will generally be because of performance anyway, it then means that player holds more value to the managers of the game, so their value then rises. Which,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I think that's the easiest way to look at it. If you see, yeah, suddenly everyone's signing some player, Emil Smith-Rowe, because I've said the E word about him, then yeah, that means he'll probably get a price rise, whether he performs or not, if everyone's signing him.
So yeah, keep an eye on that website. Give you an idea of, you know, if you because you might be priced out of players. So yeah, just keep an eye on that.
My next one is chasing points. So if a player you don't own goes and hauls in a game week, it doesn't mean that they're going to haul the next week. So don't go buying that player in because they've performed really well in one week, and you can see everyone else then going to get that player in. That player, like, for all you know, they might have a bad fixture coming up. A player, it might be that the team they were playing against that week were particularly awful. Yeah, it doesn't mean that if they go and get a 15-point haul, the following week they're going to go and get another 15-point haul. It's more than likely that there should be another player you should be trying to look at and get in, who will be getting that 15-point haul or whatever. So yeah, don't chase the points. Don't go searching for that haul from a player that got it, and again following the herd and going with the crowd. Look for that next haul somewhere else.
Okay. My next one is things that I like to do. So I love watching videos, listening to podcasts, and I kind of categorize them in 3 different areas. So I've got stats, eye test, and banter. Right. So my favorite video for stats is Black Box with Mark and Az.
Not FPL Happy Hour.
Second favorite. For me, they're the best for stats, and so that's my kind of go-to. So if I want to understand stats a lot more, then I'll watch Black Box. For the eye test, it's Planet FPL. James's knowledge is ridiculously good, and Suj's looks pretty. Alongside James,
I'll be careful what I say.
So I listen to them for the detail around what's going on in the eye tests, and then for banter, I love the FPL podcast. Not to everyone's fancy. American to Alon and Walsh, I really enjoy it, and those are the 3 for me. In terms of how I enjoy content, I listen to a whole range of other stuff, but those are the main 3 for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many out there. Like we've had Mark from the 59th Minute podcast, or FPL General even. Tom and the guys at WGTA. It's another podcast that I enjoy. Yeah, there's plenty of content out there, but yeah, I'd agree with those 3. Those 3 are probably 3 that I listen to most weeks if I can fit them in, and then I kind of fill in everywhere else with a few other guys.
And you've also got obviously like new ones as well, like Season Keepers, Man on Podcast, FPL Dummies, with those 3 that were on with the takeover week. So there's just loads and loads and loads of stuff out there. It depends what kind of thing that you enjoy, what you fancy, the content that you like. So find the genre or find the I guess podcast that suits you. Those 3 suit me because those are the ones that what I look for. But it depends what type of manager you
are. Right. On that note, with podcasts and content creators, don't be afraid to reach out to them. I'm sure as long as it's not a sort of just a picture of what do you think I should do this week, or what do you think of my teammate, or something like that. Like if you message someone through Twitter or comment on a YouTube video or whatever, then with a well constructed question, reach out to them, and I'm sure they'll be willing to help you. I'm happy to if someone asks me about a particular piece of data. I've had someone ask me about like the algorithms that I write, and I ended up like talking over a Twitter chat with them for almost a whole evening, trying to explain how all the algorithms work and everything. And there's a lot of other people out there that are willing to sort of chat if there's something worth chatting about. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm gonna have so many people messaging me now going, why the fuck have I got 500 messages in my inbox? Because you said that that people are happy to message. No, I think we definitely happily like answer questions from people with I know so many of the guys out there that are happy to, and then follow correspondence from particular teams as well. So I think it won't be next week. It'll be the following week after that. Will be correspondent week from Planet FPL. I always try and make sure that I follow every single one of those correspondents on Twitter, because some of the information they tweet out, whether it be press conference, like just basic press conference news, or rumored injuries, transfers, etc., etc. Some of them might even come out with a leaked lineup, which obviously only helps for the first game of the game week for FPL. But there's other games out there that people that listen might be playing that this will help for those games, like games like Sky, Fan Team as well. So yeah, the correspondents are also worth following. And again, I think most of them are generally happy to answer questions if you have something constructive about their relevant clubs.
Okay, my last step to satisfaction is is if you are into stats, then it's worth signing up to Hub or Scout or someone like that holds the Opta data and does kind of statistics. I've signed up for Hub, and we use Hub for our statistics. I know you use other ones as well, Rob, to get stats.
Yeah, there's. I mean, Hub and Scout have got live data feeds from Opta, so if you want to be looking at the stats like that day, then they're perfect. And they're also quite nicely formatted, and because they've got included in sort of their tables of the statistics, you can filter it by FPL position, by price, etc., can't you? So that makes it super reliable for FPL. But I also use a site called FPRef, which if you like your spreadsheets, you can export the data tables, just rip it straight from the website and export it into a spreadsheet. If you want to play around with doing things yourself, which is what I'm doing with my strategy that we spoke about. So yeah, I use FPRef a little bit, but we both use Hub a fair bit.
Yeah, so it's something like anywhere between, I think it's like 20 quid a year, something like that, which in the grand scheme of things is a huge amount of money. And then obviously on top of that, you get all the other things that membership allows you to do. I mean, we just mainly use it for the stats, but they've got loads of articles and stuff like that. So yeah, sign up to one of those websites if it's something. By the way, this is not an ad, right? Like I'm just putting it out there.
Neither of us are on the books at
affiliates,
Hub or Scout.
Yeah, so we're not affiliates. So yeah, I mean, it's not saying that you need to sign up, saying that that's what we enjoy doing. So if you like looking at stats, I would recommend you looking at something like that. But like Rob says, you can also do it free from like FPRef or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, Rob, your last one.
My final one is enjoy it. Simple as that. At the end of the day, it is just a game. I think in the past and at times last season, we did see a lot of negativity and a lot of anger with certain things. We know that there was the controversy of the 2019-2020 season, and someone not winning FPL because of their anger. So yeah, once the game week's over, take a step back. If you're the type of person that still likes to try and be involved, take a step back, but just look at maybe just like I tend to go and look at heat maps and start like not trying to look at my FPL score, but I'm trying to just look at the facts and figures of how that game week went from that point of view, rather than go umming and ahhing about, oh, if I made this move, if I did that move, etc., etc. So yeah, if you feel that you still want to be involved or you want to look into why it might have gone wrong, yeah, go and do it the right way and don't fill my timeline up with negativity because it's boring. It's boring, and there's a lot worse things to be negative about, if that makes sense. So yeah,
Nice.
just
That's a good one.
enjoy it. It's a game, and there's a community out there that like if you've had a bad week, there's probably 1,000 other people in the FPL community, on Twitter, on Reddit, on Facebook, that have all had a bad week as well. So enjoy it. I think one of the best accounts last season was Randy Shafter, because he didn't own John Stones, but he just tweeted what everyone was thinking, but it just made it very light-hearted, and it was just like, at first I thought he was being serious, and then after a while you realise it wasn't. But that's what you got to do at the end of the day. Just laugh about it. It's, at the end of the day, it's not. We don't play it like we all love football. At the end of the day, we enjoy watching football. It's just it's an added extra to the enjoyment of watching football. So yeah, always remember that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the panda
all
has
10
spoken.
That's 10 steps to satisfaction complete.
Yeah, follow those top 10 steps, and you'll be fully satisfied. If not, contact at 2guys1cup on Twitter.
Yeah, at 2guys1cup, not at FPL 2guys1cup.
And he'll give you the 11th step to satisfaction.
Or 2 girls 1 cup, whichever. That's the 11th step.
No, don't watch that. If you're under 18, don't search it.
Yeah. Right. Okay, Rob, do you want to finish off with some housekeeping?
Yeah, so just another quick shout out for the mini league. I don't think I put it up on the descriptions of the podcast last week. For those watching on the video, the code is there. It's 1PQSL. I think it's an L. 1PQSLT to enter the mini league, which the prize will be a shirt with our pictures on it, our names on it, or your name, which it'll be some names on the back and maybe a number or 2 numbers. So yeah, and there'll be a cup competition as well. The entries for the mini league will be closed probably, I think we said around game week 6. I think we said.
Yeah.
For that. Also, my mini league, which is called the Big FPL. What's it called? The Big FPL Mini League. The Mini FPL Big Mini League. I've forgotten what it's called. But yeah, I've obviously been sort of tweeting about it in the last 10 days now, 2 weeks. We've got 121 entrants. We've raised over £100 for charity already. It's really good with 2.5 weeks to go, aiming for maybe around 250 entrants, which would be brilliant. I was informed of a few things that the club that raising money for, Rudrick Football Club, based in Sussex, they used for last season, and they actually used the money for new pitch, some dugouts, some training kits, and it went towards the defibrillator that was placed somewhere on the field where the ground is, which is very central in the village that it's based, which has got public access. So yeah, lots of great things going on there. So yeah, hopefully raise a little bit more money for them. If you want to contribute more to the club, you can find them at rudrickfc.co.uk, where there's you can do gift aid and all that jazz. So yeah, if you
want to join, then just contact you.
Yeah, on I think it's my pinned tweet. There's a Google form you can fill out. It's got PayPal details, and then you get a confirmation email. There's a Twitter group chat, there's a Facebook group chat, and there's a WhatsApp group chat, which you can be a part of all three. You can be part of just one of them, or you don't have to be part of it at all. But yeah, they're gradually picking up now with people sort of chatting about their different teams and stuff. So yeah, get involved. It'll be great fun.
Nice. Right. So we are recording again next week. I'm not sure what day yet. But we'll do an episode next week.
I think in general we'll probably continue to release the podcast sort of either on a Thursday or Friday, and then as we get to the start of the season, we'll probably do the week before game week 1. We'll probably go back to our normal release on a Monday or Tuesday, and then a live stream the night before the deadline. So yeah, this will probably be so it's next week we normal, and then after that I think it's back to the two podcasts and live streams a week. And this season we'll do what we did in Euros, and we'll release the live stream audio out straight after, so that anyone that misses the live stream can listen to it on their commute to their dining room table or their office. A lot of people are going back to their office now, so yeah.
Cool. Right. Thanks for tuning in. You can find us on Twitter at FPL_Happy Hour. We're also on Apple Music podcasts and Spotify and all of that. Loads of different ones. And our YouTube channel is FPL Happy Hour. Please like, subscribe, and share, and all your retweets are really appreciated. So until then, have a great I was about to say it again. Until then, have a great week. I keep on saying game week.
Cheers, guys. And those who are in London on Saturday, see you Saturday. Cheers.
Cheers.